YouTube community, welcome to this latest episodes of the Mufasa Sports Clubs. I'm your host Mufasa, and I want to start this episode again by thanking you guys for all the support, continued support that you guys have been expressing to the channel. I want to continue encouraging you guys. Please continue to like the videos, subscribe to the channel, share it within your family, your friends, and any other person that you may know on your social media platform. Let's continue to grow this community together. Tonight we're gonna be talking about the standings. Well, not the standings, but the outcome of the semifinals of the playoffs in the NBA. Which teams are most likely making it to the conference finals, and also we're gonna touch on the lottery. The NBA lottery that occurred last night, pretty much at the time of the recording. The lottery draft that occurred last night, like I was saying, and what implication these different selections might have on the outcome of certain teams and on what the summer might look like in the NBA world. So once again, guys, make sure you like the video, you subscribe to the channel, and you share it within your community. All right, I want to start off by sending my prayers out to Jason Tatum, who unfortunately injured himself on a non-contact injury last night during the Boston Celtics and New York Knicks game. Major injury after great performance that he was having. I think the 40 plus points performance that he was having up until he got hurt. He apparently had a surgery today to repair his Achilles, I believe, and will most likely be out for an extended period of time. Reports are currently talking about an undetermined recovery period. I think my guess here would be him being out for, if not the entirety of the next season, which now, in my opinion, solves and determines the fate of the Boston Celtics for this series, and will be a pretty interesting offseason. With the Celtics, we're gonna be having a more in-depth conversation in the next episodes regarding what's the outlook of the Celtics offseason. But I wanted to start by expressing that compassion to Jason Tatum and his family, and I only send positive energy towards him and hope for a speedy recovery. But this also leads me to actually point out what the Celtics have been doing and playing around with from the beginning of this series, and them basically blowing out 2 20 points lead at the beginning of the series by losing those first 2 games at home at TD Garden, solely by blowing it off by just continuing to shoot those 3-point shots that they so stubborn with. And this starts with Coach Joe Mazzulla, and his philosophy. Unfortunately, you lose those first 2 games at home, win game 3, struggling to win game 4 on the road to tie the series to 2-2, and here you have it now with your best player, getting a season-ending injury. This is why it's super important, especially when you are a contending team and you're really serious about winning that championship. This is why you don't play around and protect home court, because you never know what could happen in the series. A player might get hurt, a player might get suspended for a game. Anything can happen. So when you have the opportunity to win a game, you take it and you run away with it. And the Celtics had the opportunity for those 2 first games and just decided to give it away. I still remember game 2 of this series. They went and shot 20 shots in the third quarter of that game. And out of those 20 shots, 19 of those were 3-point shots. This is insane to think that a team for a whole quarter shoots literally almost just 3-point shots. It's ridiculous. And unfortunately for them, they were not in a good shooting night, so jacked up a whole lot of threes and end up losing the game at the end of in the last minutes of the game. They end up losing that game, and now it's biting them back, and I think they're out. I think this is over for them, and this is strictly off of them, handing out those first two games that are now playing such a major role in the outcome of the series. Because if you are 3-1, eventually winning those first two games at home, and then Jason Tatum goes down, you only need one more game without him to possibly make it to the next round and therefore get to the conference finals. So that's once again a coaching issue in my opinion, because the Celtics are definitely a way more talented team than the Knicks. I know the Knicks play with more, heart and camaraderie and team spirit, but on pure sheer talent, the Celtics are just a way better team, and I think they probably also got super confident with their talent and the way they won the NBA last year and got stubborn with this 3-point shot, and unfortunately now would not make it to the conference finals nor make it to the NBA finals for a possible chance to repeat. So kudos to the New York Knicks for an impressive resilience and determination to not give up. I truly enjoyed watching these games and seeing them continue to fight even when they were down by 20. Shout out to Jalen Brunson, who's been amazing throughout these playoffs. Shout out to Karl-Anthony Towns, Josh Hart, incredible rebounder for a guard, plays with a lot of passion and heart, no pun intended, and it's just great to watch. Mikal Bridges has been also great. I'm assuming that's why they wanted to trade 5 first-round picks to get him. OG Anunoby has been very good as well and was able to stay healthy this season. And I think one of the most crucial things that have happened in this series is that ability that Tom Thibodeau had to go ahead and play that double big lineup with Mitchell Robinson and Karl-Anthony Towns in a good stretch of the games, even though the Celtics have tried several times to hack a Mitchell Robinson by putting him on the free throw line, and he's been horrific from the free throw line so far. But the Knicks had found a way to just gut it out, and I think they're making it to the conference finals now, and would most likely be facing the Indiana Pacers for a very interesting conference finals. If the Pacers do not blow that 3-1 lead that they currently have, if I'm not mistaken, in the second, let me confirm that, in the second semifinals of the Eastern Conference Finals, the Pacers, yes, actually are leading 3-1 against the Cleveland Cavaliers, also out there. And like I've been saying, a major part of a playoff success is health. It's important that your key players stay healthy during the playoffs if you want to aspire to a championship. Despite an amazing regular season that the Cavs have been having, they unfortunately had dealt with injuries during this playoffs, starting with Darius Garland, the point guard, who's been having a toe injury that kept him out for the first games of the series. And I think game 2 as well, Evan Mobley and DeAndre Hunter were out with with injuries or sickness, which is now leading to the Cavs being down 3-1 and literally having to win every single game remaining, with one game back in Indiana, of course, to get to the conference finals. Is it impossible? No. If there's a franchise that's done it before, it was the Cleveland Cavaliers with LeBron James against my Golden State Warriors. But this is a total different team, and I don't think they will be able to overcome that deficit. I think the Pacers end up probably closing it in 5 or 6 at the most, and get to the conference finals. If you are Indiana and excuse me, if you are Indiana, and shout out to Tyrese Halliburton, actually, who's been playing fantastic basketball so far in this series, have completely shut down the noise, and the useless survey that came out that had him as the most overrated player in the NBA so far this season. That was just utterly disgusting to see this survey, and whoever those players are, I don't know what they're smoking, but Tyrese Halliburton is definitely not the most overrated player in the NBA. So shout out to him, shout out to Miles Turner, Pascal Siakam, and Ray Carlisle, the head coach of the Pacers. If they're able to clinch that second conference final appearance again, that would be the second times in a row. Last year they faced the Celtics, and this year they're going to be facing, if they're able to secure that 4th win against the Cavs, they will be facing most likely the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals. So shout out to them. And if you are the Pacers, you don't want to get to 7. You don't want to get to a game 7 because, like I said again, anything could happen. You might have one of your key players that gets hurt. We saw it last year with Tyrese Halliburton, for instance, being hurt and not really playing against the Boston Celtics in the finals. So if you're the Pacers, you have them right where you need them. Just close this thing out and move on to the next series in also order to give time for your players to rest and being able to be at least close to 100% in the next round. So shout out to both the Knicks and the Pacers on the Eastern Conference side, and on the Western Conference side of the NBA, you have the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Denver Nuggets that are actually tied at 2-2 at the moment, with Game 5 happening in Oklahoma. I really think this is a series that could easily get to 7. I think the experience of the Nuggets is playing a crucial part in this series, with guys like Russell Westbrook, who's been playing well, Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, who's been excellent, and surprisingly Nikola Jokic, who hasn't really found his groove yet and is really being disturbed by the bigs that the Thunder continue to throw at him. I think the Thunders are actually having an approach similar to what the Minnesota Timberwolves did last year, by having multiple bigs challenging Jokic every single time, and this is what they're doing with Chet Holmgren, Isaiah Hartenstein, and Jalen Williams coming off the bench as well. And he's been struggling so far, but I'm not expecting Jokic to struggle for the whole series. So I could definitely see him being very impactful and win one of the next games for Denver. And the Thunder would strictly have to rely on their youth and determination to make a deep playoff run and finally assert themselves as serious contenders and not just a regular season team. I think those should be the motivation behind that should be driving the Thunder at the moment, and I think they have the ability to do it. I can't make any prediction on that series yet. I think I will probably just predict that it goes to Game 7, and if we do get to Game 7, I'll probably by then make my mind up on who advances to the conference finals. Second game of the Western Conference Finals, semifinals rather, is between the Golden State Warriors and the Minnesota Timberwolves, and it's about the same thing out there. I think it's over for the Warriors. Unfortunately, that hamstring injury that Steph Curry suffered is definitely killing the Warriors at the moment. And I was expecting more of Jimmy Butler. I was expecting Jimmy to at least show up and win one game, so that maybe they stick to a 2-2 in the first 4 games, and hopefully get Steph back for a game 5. But the Timberwolves are currently winning the series 3-1. And another issue out there is with Steve Kerr, who is also stubborn, and I hate this stubbornness and idea of small ball that has been successful in the past, but that Steve Kerr continues over and over to rely on so much. And only in the past 2 games, because of the Steph Curry's injury, now decided to play some additional young players with a little bit of size, in the likes of Jonathan Kuminga and Trayce Jackson-Davis. And unfortunately, even though these guys have been playing well, the Warriors are down 3-1. I'm not sure if Steph is going to play Game 5. If he does, I don't know if he's 100% or even close to that. Is it not risky? Those are questions that you can legitimately ask yourself. But I'm sure if there's a chance, he will give it a go and try to bring them back to a 3-3 and possibly a Game 7 and winning the series. That would be quite interesting if the Warriors are able to overcome this, but I do not see that happening, as the Timberwolves are just a bigger team, and with them just needing one more game, you would probably need a tremendous Steph Curry in the next 4 games to overcome that, and that would be pretty legendary if he was able to pull that out. But I'm rolling, unfortunately, against my will with the Timberwolves on that end as well. So I'm predicting the Minnesota Timberwolves on the Western Conference Finals, just like last year, as a matter of fact. And anybody between Denver and Oklahoma, with me making my prediction on that game if it does go to 7. That's pretty much what I have for the semifinals of the NBA. And I just want to quickly touch on the lottery draft that occurred last night as well, with my Philadelphia 76ers keeping the pick, not only keeping the pick, but actually jumping to the 3rd pick in the NBA draft next month in Brooklyn, New York. I'm super pumped, super excited that the Sixers were actually able to not only keep their pick because it was a top 6 protected pick, but they were able to get so close to the number 1 pick. I was obviously rooting for them to get the number 1 pick, but it didn't happen. But I still think there is a good value at the 3 pick to get a player that would not only be able to contribute right away, but also be able to follow that timeline with guys like Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain, and Quentin Grimes and Adam Bona, and all these young guys, this young core that the Sixers have for the future. Of course, they still have Joel Embiid and Paul George, and their health is pretty much what's going to determine where the Sixers might end up next season. We're going to have a whole episode probably soon, very soon, in the next days, regarding what the draft should look like for the Sixers, and ultimately what the offseason should also look like. So very happy for the Sixers. Congratulations to the Sixers. I think the biggest winners of this draft are obviously these top 3 teams. The Dallas Mavericks, in a ridiculous turnaround, get the number one pick, and obviously would probably get, if anything crazy doesn't come out of, Nico Harrison's head again, will probably keep and draft Cooper Flag, and therefore completely change what the outlook of the team might be for the future after this insane trade at the deadline between the Lakers and the Mavericks, where Luka Doncic ended up with the Lakers. Great turnaround here, and the conspiracy theories are flying all over the place. I'm not gonna engage into any conspiracy theory. It looks really odd. It's something that had crossed my mind, but I was just like, this is crazy if it does happen, and it did happen, and it's really crazy. So kudos, and I'm really happy for the Mavericks fans. Kudos to them for getting that number one pick, and most likely Cooper Flag. And the second beneficiary of this lottery is the San Antonio Spurs, who continue to be extremely lucky. I think we could also have a conspiracy theory with the Spurs, but it is what it is. They, after drafting the last two rookies of the years with Wemby 2 years ago and Stefan Castle at number 4, I believe, last year, they get the number 2 pick and the number 14 pick this season in the first round. I'm not sure what the Spurs are going to do with the draft. This is a pretty interesting situation because I think they'll be in the sweepstakes for Giannis Antetokounmpo if he does decide to exit out of Milwaukee. We're going to also have, for the most part, another video in the future where we discuss about what needs to be done on the end of the Spurs and how the offseason should look. But it's a great asset to have because you can draft a guy like Ace Bailey or Dylan Harper and use him as a trade chip to get a bigger star, or just moving right along with the timeline of the Victor Wembanyama, Stephen Castle, and De'Aaron Fox out there with the plethora of picks that this Spurs organization actually has there. So I'm really happy for the Spurs also, especially after this trying time with Coach Popovich and his health condition and him retiring and going strictly as president of basketball operations now. I'm really happy for that organization. At least a little bit of joy coming out their way out there. So congrats again to them, and obviously to my Sixers. And the rest of the lottery goes as follows. I think we have the Charlotte Hornets at number 4, Utah Jazz 5, Washington Wizards 6, Pelicans 7, Brooklyn 8, Toronto Raptors 9, Houston Rockets 10, Portland Trail Blazers 11, Chicago Bulls 12, Atlanta Hawks 13, and San Antonio Spurs 14. A couple of things to point out here. It will be interesting to see what the Rockets also do, especially after that first round exit against the Warriors. I could see them try to get a guy like Kevin Durant as well, especially with a pick as valuable as the 10th pick in this draft, and a pick that initially was owned by Phoenix. So that'll be interesting to see what happens on that end, if the Rockets are interested in getting a closer like Kevin Durant. So we'll be monitoring that. I think the biggest lesson in these two past lottery draft is for those teams that get into the season with the goal of tanking. Teams like the Utah Jazz, the Washington Wizards, that were in contention to capture the flag, as the campaign was said, to obviously get Cooper Flag and the number 1 pick. These past two drafts, you have the Hawks and the Dallas Mavericks this year who get the number 1 pick with one of the lowest odds of winning the draft. Both of them were teams that were in the plains last year, and they ended up getting this draft. I think this is time for these front offices to realize that, you can't go into a season by planning on being bad and sitting your players as early as January. That is just absolutely ridiculous. Yes, you draw a bigger chance with the lottery system at the moment of getting the number 1 pick, but there's no guarantee. The highest chance is still 14%. So I think you should focus more on drafting better, because you don't only get good drafts at the top. You got guys like Nikola Jokic, who was a second-round pick. So invest more into better scouting reports, better development programs within your organization, but also build through free agency and trades. The Nets will have a lot of cap space this season, for instance. I think they should just go ahead and try to get their team better to be at least somewhat competitive, because the more competitive you are, the more attractive you get to free agents and players that might think, oh, I might be the player away from contention or a playoff spot for this team, and you get more attractive. So these teams should definitely stop this whole idea of tanking, because it's just not guaranteed. And in the case of the Jazz and the Wizards, for instance, and even the Hornets, they were not expecting to fall into like the 4th, the 5th, or 6th pick this season, because they barely had like 15, 17 wins throughout the season. So you should continue developing the players that you draft. Build through the free agency when you have cap space, or plans, set yourself up to get cap space in the nearest future, and try to attract a star player that way with the max contract. But also, through, like I said, trades, and even these first picks, even though they're not, number 1 or 2, 3 picks, you can still get some good players at the 7th, 10th, 11th position, or even in the second round, like I mentioned with what's his name, Nikola Jokic. I remember the Warriors here. Steph Curry gets drafted, if I'm not mistaken, 7th or 8th. Same thing with Klay Thompson. They're not first 2, 3 picks in the draft, but they managed to draft well, develop these players, and they were able to create a dynasty that way. So I think, the more you play your players, the better they become, and you should play them throughout the whole season. I've seen the Jazz shutting down Lauri Markkanen super early this season, not playing him on purpose to lose as many games as possible. All of this to not just be the 5th pick in the draft. Yes, you can still try to trade up and get a better pick, but it's just not a sustainable approach. And it's the same thing with the Raptors. They did that with Scottie Barnes and RJ Barrett, and Brandon Ingram doesn't even come back at all after he gets traded. This is not a good approach from these front offices, and I think a serious conversation also needs to be had within the NBA, the league office, as far as like I was suggesting, getting a better system in place for these first round picks, especially the lottery. I think the way it's set up right now is unfortunately encouraging teams to continue on taking the leap of faith and try to tank in the hopes of getting the first round pick, which is then impacting the level of competition, and teams just right before even January sometimes purposely losing games and not putting any effort out there. So again, guys, make sure you let me know what you think about everything that we've discussed and the tanking issue and all these different topics that we've spoken about on this episode. Let me know what you guys think of what these teams need to do, and if you think there's a conspiracy theory on the NBA as well, I'm all willing to hear from you. But this is a wrap for this episode, and once again, I want to thank you for your support, and continue to be passionate, continue to be blessed, take care of yourself, because every day is a new life, and I'll see you in the next episode. Peace.